The Dallas Cowboys are walking into the 2026 season carrying something they haven't had in a long time: urgency mixed with humility. After a disastrous defensive campaign in 2025 that saw them give up over 30 points per game, this franchise has been forced to confront a reality it tried to ignore for too long. Talent alone wasn't enough. Star power didn't translate to stops. And now, the entire identity of this team is being reshaped from the ground up, starting with a defense that had nowhere to go but up. That transformation begins with the arrival of new voices, new schemes, and new belief systems inside the building. One of the most telling additions isn't a headline-grabbing superstar, but rather a player like Kobe Durant. His signing may not have dominated national headlines, but his words revealed something far more important than stats or contracts. Durant didn't just choose Dallas for opportunity. He chose it because of the coaching structure, specifically pointing to Brian Schottenheimer and defensive coordinator Christian Parker as major influences. When a player compares a new head coach to Sean McVay, that carries weight. That suggests organization, clarity, and a system that empowers players rather than confuses them. And for a Cowboys defense that looked completely disjointed last season, that kind of structure could be everything. Durant brings more than just coverage ability. He brings a mentality shaped by winning culture in Los Angeles, and that swagger is exactly what this secondary lacked. When you combine him with additions like Jalen Thompson and P.J. Locke, you start to see a deliberate effort to rebuild not just talent, but confidence. This is no longer a passive unit hoping to survive games. This is a group being built to attack. But let's not pretend this rebuild is complete. Far from it. If anything, the Cowboys are still patching holes in a sinking ship while trying to redesign it at the same time. The numbers don't lie. This defense is returning just over half of its snaps from last season. That kind of turnover is massive, and while it creates opportunity, it also introduces serious risk. Chemistry doesn't develop overnight, and the NFL doesn't wait for teams to figure things out. The most glaring issue sits right in the middle of the defense. Linebacker. Over 1,400 snaps gone, and not a single major addition to replace them. That's not just a gap. That's a structural void. The Cowboys are currently banking on internal development and potential draft picks to solve one of the most important positions in modern defense. And if they get that wrong, it won't matter how improved the secondary looks or how aggressive the pass rush becomes. Speaking of the pass rush, the addition of Rashawn Gary signals a philosophical shift. This isn't about chasing sack titles anymore. It's about fit. Gary is seen as a better match for Christian Parker's scheme, which is expected to incorporate multiple fronts and hybrid looks. That versatility matters, especially when you consider how predictable Dallas became last season. However, losing production from players like Jadeveon Clowney still leaves questions. Can Gary replicate that impact? Can the scheme elevate the talent? Or will this be another case of reshuffling without real improvement? Now, here's where things get interesting. Because if you're enjoying this level of breakdown and you want to stay ahead of every Cowboys move, every roster shift, and every strategic decision that could define this season, make sure you subscribe right now. Because what's happening in Dallas isn't just an off-season. It's a full-scale reset, and you don't want to miss how it unfolds. The front office, led by Jerry Jones, seems to understand the stakes. His comments about the team needing just a lick of defense to make a playoff run weren't just casual remarks. They were an admission. This team believes it was closer than its record suggested, and that belief is driving their approach. Instead of chasing expensive stars, the Cowboys have leaned into a quantity over quality strategy in free agency. Depth over splash. Flexibility over headlines. That approach has its advantages. It allows the team to build competition across the roster and avoid being crippled by one bad contract. But it also places enormous pressure on coaching. When you don't have elite, game-changing talent at every level, your scheme, your adjustments, and your player development have to be flawless. There's no margin for error. And that brings us to the draft. If there's one thing that will define the Cowboys' 2026 season before it even begins, it's how they navigate the first round. The needs are obvious. Cornerback, pass rusher, linebacker, possibly offensive line depth, depending on how they view Tyler Guyton and Nate Thomas. But the order of those decisions, and who falls to them, could reshape this roster overnight. The pro day circuit is already giving us clues. Cowboys coaches have been everywhere, from powerhouse programs like Clemson and USC to smaller schools looking for hidden gems. That tells you they're casting a wide net, not locking themselves into one path. And in a draft where depth at cornerback is particularly strong, don't be surprised if Dallas double dips at the position. They need bodies, but more importantly, they need difference makers. Meanwhile, the offense remains the steady pillar of this team. Returning over 90% of its snaps, this unit doesn't need a rebuild. It needs support. The decision to retain Javonte Williams looks smarter by the day, especially in a market where running backs were getting overpaid. Franchise tagging George Pickens ensures the passing game remains explosive. And restructuring contracts for Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyler Smith provided the financial flexibility to make all these defensive moves possible. But even here, there are underlying questions. What happens if Pickens doesn't get his long-term deal? Does that become a distraction? And can the offensive line hold up if injuries force players like Tyler Smith to shift positions again? Depth signings like TJ Bass become more important than people realize. He's not a star, but he's reliable, versatile, and proven. In a long NFL season, those are the players who keep your system functioning when things go wrong. And things always go wrong. Then there's the bigger picture. The schedule may not be fully set yet, but we already know the challenges ahead. Facing teams that have reloaded in free agency, including rivals and playoff contenders, this Cowboys team won't get any easy breaks. Whether it's dealing with a reinforced Washington pass rush, a revamped San Francisco offense, or unpredictable matchups against teams like Arizona and Houston, every game will test this new defensive identity. And that's the real story. Here, not just who the Cowboys added, but whether this new identity is real. Can they go from one of the worst defenses in franchise history to a unit that can actually win games? Can Christian Parker turn a collection of parts into a cohesive, aggressive system? And can this team finally break the cycle of inconsistency that has defined them for years? Because make no mistake, this isn't just another offseason. This is a turning point. The Cowboys have made their bets. They've reshaped their roster. They've invested in coaching. And now, everything comes down to execution. So as we look ahead to 2026, the question isn't whether Dallas improved. They did. The question is whether they improved enough. Enough to compete. Enough to contend. Enough to finally deliver on expectations that have been building for decades. And if you want to follow every twist, every breakout player, and every defining moment of this Cowboy season, make sure you stay locked in and subscribe, because this ride is just getting started, and it's going to be one of the most fascinating seasons this franchise has had in years.